Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to the next session on the webinar series of GST. Today we have Bimal Jain sir with us, who is a CA and CS, and he has more than 20 years of experience in indirect taxation. He is the chairman of Indirect Tax Committee of PhD Chamber of Commerce and member of IDT Committee of ASSOCHAM and FICCI. Associated with names like LG Electronics, Honda Motorcycles and Scooters, Khaitan and Company, etc. Sir will today take us through the provisions of place and time of supply. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, friends. I welcome you all on this ICSI GST webcast. This GST is very important for all of us together, being professional opportunities coming to our way. Topic assigned to me, time of supply for goods and services, place of supply for goods and services. Before I take up this technical topic, I would like to take you through with the journey of GST, and then I will discuss little bit on the term supply, and then I will take up the topic of the day, time of supply and place of supply. When I'm talking about journey, just to highlight for all of you, you must be knowing the first model GST law came on public domain on 14 June 2016. Thereafter, number of suggestions, around 40,000 suggestions was given on a first model GST law. Then we got revised model GST law on 26th of November 2016, and you must be knowing that the final GST law pertaining to CGST, IGST, UTGST and compensation bill is already passed by Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, which has got signed by Honorable President of the country. Now these are CGST Act 2017, IGST Act 2017, UTGST Act 2017 and Compensation Act 2017. Having said that, next question which is very important for all of us together. We all are looking for when GST going to be implemented in the country, July 1, 2017 or some other date. To tell you and highlight, it's a constitutional compulsion. What is the constitutional compulsion? That GST has to come. GST has to come on or before 15 September 2017. The ruling party, NDA party, and Honorable Finance Minister and Prime Minister has categorically stated that they wanted to implement GST by July 1, 2017. So next question comes, are we really prepared and ready for GST by July 1, 2017? Just look at some of the components which is important. We all know CGST, IGST, UTGST and compensation bill is now Act 2017, but importantly, all the state assembly has to pass model SGST law. Telangana has done it. Now other state has to follow it, but practical situation, even 122 Constitution Amendment Bill is not yet ratified by Karnataka, Kerala, West Bengal. So I'm only just preparing the mindset whether July 1 is a realistic date for implementation of GST, because 122 Constitution Amendment Bill need to be ratified, followed by model SGST law need to be adopted and passed by all the state assemblies. Having said that, now next question will come. We have got CGST, IGST, UTGST and compensation bill as an act which is duly assented by the Honorable President of the country, but all the state, 29 state plus 2 union territories with state legislature has to adopt model SGST law as SGST Act, followed by there are around 14 draft rules on public domain. You must be knowing initially 5 rules came on public domain sometime in September 2016 pertaining to registration, payment, invoice, debit note, credit note, return and refund. These all 5 draft rules got revised. Alongside, they have also issued new rules for valuation, transition, composition, input tax credit, and thereafter they have also issued draft rules for audit and assessment, eBay bill, and yesterday they have issued 3 draft rules pertaining to accounts and records, advanced ruling, and judgment, adjudication, assessment to be passed. So 14 rules are there on public domain. These are yet to be finalized. So next question comes, by when these 14 rules going to be finalized? Because I'm targeting July 1 is the target date for implementation of GST, then it has to be approved on a faster note. Having said that, you must be knowing that GST Council has given 4-tier rate for classification of goods: 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%, and 28% with cess. Cess is going to be levied on aerated beverages, tobacco, pan masala, luxury cars, coal, and other items as notified by central government or state government on recommendation of GST Council. Now even these 4-tier rate, there is no fitment classification list has been approved as yet, and what is being stated that GST Council is going to meet on 18th and 19th of May to discuss and finalize the classification fitment of goods into these respective categories. This is pertaining to fitment and classification, which is not yet finalized. Next open item, what will be GST rate going to be applicable for service sector? From our GDP, 60% comes from service sector. Today's service tax rate is 15%. What we are hearing in the market, that standard GST rate for service taxability would be 18%. So there would be hike of 20% if we compare existing service tax rate. So it needs to be finalized by GST Council, and I'm discussing all these components keeping in mind that we all are targeting July 1 as a target date. Next component important could be GST and network. This is going to be a backbone for GST implementation. We are moving from paper taxation to paperless taxation. Whether this GST and network is ready, because GST and network going to play important role for registration, for invoice, and for return filing, and for payment of GST liability. We do not know as on date to what extent GSTN is ready. So I'm only saying that these are the open and subjective item. Having said that, one important aspect which is important for all of us together, GST Awareness Program. There are around 10 million, 1 crore tax SSE in the first go in GST net. We have to give proper GST awareness. This program need to taken to a level of SME and MSME sector where aggregate turnover crosses 20 lakh rupees. And we all know what is the definition of aggregate turnover. Aggregate turnover, threshold amount 20 lakh rupees. It's including taxable supply, exempt supply, export, and interstate supply. Exempt supply includes any goods falling at nil rate or exempted by way of exemption notification or not taxable. So this 20 lakh rupees is a too low a figure and looks like most of the SSE will come into GST net. I will discuss these components during my deliberation, but I'm starting today's presentation and topic given to me, time of supply and place of supply. Before I take up time of supply and place of supply, let me conclude whether July 1 is a realistic date and what is the importance of the webcast which is going on from the ICSI. This is really a good opportunity for all of us together to prepare for GST, whether July 1 or 1st September, but on or before 15 September 2017, we all have to prepare. Either we are working in a company or we are doing our own practice. GST virtually going to be realistic term for all of us together. Why? We all know those parameters. Around 17 indirect taxes, either levied by central government or state government going to subsume into one basket, that is going to be called GST, Goods and Services Tax. If you want to highlight what are the taxes applicable at central level: excise duty, service tax, number of surcharge and cess, Swachh Bharat cess, Krishi Kalyan cess, infrastructure cess, clean energy cess. These central taxes going to subsume. What is going to be subsumed from state perspective? Value added tax applicable on intrastate sell purchase of goods. CST applicable on interstate sell purchase of goods. Luxury tax, entertainment tax, entry tax, octroi, local body tax, around 17 indirect taxes merging into one basket. Advantage 1, which we are perceiving in GST. Advantage 2, cascading of taxes will go away to certain extent. Why I am using the term certain extent, reason is very simple. You know, 5 specified petroleum products would be out of GST. What are those 5 products? Petrol, diesel, crude petrol, aviation turbine fuel and natural gas. So these will continue to be central excise applicable and VAT applicable, of which no credit would be available in GST regime. Then alcoholic liquor for human consumption, and it looks like power sector because entry 53 of list 2 is not amended. So electricity duty will continue, and it looks like that power sector would be out of GST. So what happened? Electricity duty levied on electricity will not be available as a credit. So cascading continue to certain extent in GST, but overall other taxes which is subsuming into GST, credit would be available, and I will discuss this component with you. If you want to understand in realistic term where the cascading comes from, excise duty charged by a manufacturer to a VAT dealer, no credit in the hands of VAT dealer unless he is a manufacturer or first stage dealer or second stage dealer. VAT dealer charging VAT to a company secretary practicing, no credit in the hands of company secretary practicing. Company secretary practicing charging service tax to a VAT dealer, no credit. CST, entry tax, octroi credit is not available. These cascading will go away. Seamless credit would be available in GST regime to certain extent. Third important parameter, India is struggling with double taxes. A particular transaction is chargeable to service tax and VAT both together. We know software, AC restaurant, construction, works contract, IPR, right to use of movable goods, double taxes applicable. But GST going to provide a clarity. A transaction can either be supply of goods or supply of services. So double taxation which is happening today will go away in GST regime. Last and foremost, important one, being company secretary, we always struggle that today if you look at NCR region, National Capital Region, Gurgaon is being governed by Haryana VAT provision. Just 10 km away from Gurgaon to Delhi, Haryana VAT is not applicable. Delhi is governed by Delhi VAT provision. Just 10 km away Noida, Delhi VAT provision is not applicable, governed by UP VAT provision. And from VAT perspective, we got state barrier. It looks like we got 29 countries within the Union Territory of India. VAT-wise provision vary from one state to another state. We got state barrier pertaining to registration amount, return filing, compliances, payment of tax, adjudication, assessment, input tax credit, and number of other provisions which vary from one state to another state. GST going to provide uniformity throughout the nation, and that is the reason Honorable Prime Minister has said GST going to be a one nation, one tax. What is the in realistic term? In realistic term, GST going to be applicable, whatever applicable in Delhi, going to be applicable all over India except Jammu and Kashmir. So whatever applicable GST provision pertaining to registration, payment, invoice, return, refund, whatever might be, whatever applicable in Delhi, going to be applicable all over India. So if we know what is provision applicable in Delhi, I can do GST practice for across pan India. But today, if you pose this query to me, I am in Delhi, I can look after Delhi VAT at most, but I cannot look after Kerala VAT, Tamil Nadu VAT, West Bengal VAT, Odisha VAT. Why? Because law provisions are different. It is different on language. So today we find 29 states or 29 countries. So I'm using the one tag word, which is one nation, one tax. GST law going to be a Gita, Bible or Quran, irrespective of any language, religion, race and caste. So what happened if I'm a Bengali, but I know what is provision applicable for GST in Delhi, same provision going to be applicable in Kolkata. What is applicable in Kolkata, applicable in Hyderabad, Kerala, Bangalore, Chennai. So we all become united, and that is the reason we are using the term GST going to be one nation, one tax. And look at an opportunity now. This is the high time our profession should stand up for this opportunity. This opportunity is the biggest indirect tax reform since independence. So these webcasts is giving a privilege to all of us to prepare on a faster note. Though July 1 stated to be implementation date, but what is important, we should really stand up and grasp this opportunity for our CS profession and make sure that which is going to be biggest indirect tax reform as stated by Honorable Prime Minister and Finance Minister, and they are targeting 2% incremental GDP growth. Why can't we stand up and grasp this opportunity and say that we are also equally competent to look after the GST subject matter? With this mindset, with this positivity and optimistic view, I request each one of you who is watching today's webcast, just listen carefully, and I'll be delighted in case you are having any query from GST Corner. Please post those queries. I will definitely take up your queries at the end of my webcast, but it would be delight for me in case I see number of queries coming from all of you. So I do not know how many of you are watching this webcast today, but perceiving that we all are watching and we are really gearing up for GST, and this webcast is one of the way to train and learn GST. And with this process, we as a CS profession will grasp this opportunity which we all are looking for. Look forward for your queries. Let's start with the topic of the day. See, topic given to me, time of supply and place of supply. Let me start with time of supply. What is time of supply? Before I touch base time of supply, let me highlight. As I said, around 17 indirect taxes merging into one basket, which is going to be GST. So today, excise applicable on manufacturing of goods, sale tax, VAT or CST, VAT on intrastate, CST on interstate, applicable on sale of goods including deemed sale, service tax applicable on rendering of service. Whether these concepts would be there in GST? Answer is big no. There will be no relevance of manufacturing, sell, rendering of service. The taxable event in GST going to be supply. Supply of goods, supply of services. So supply is going to be a taxable event. When supply is being made, GST applicable. So next question comes, what is the meaning of supply? As you must be knowing, the way the term supply is being defined, it is very subjective and inclusive definition. How the term supply is being defined? They say supply includes without defining what is supply, meaning thereby the term supply is subjective because they have not defined what is supply, and definition start like this: supply includes all forms of supply of goods or services or both, such as. So supply includes all forms of supply of goods or services or both. So supply going to be a taxable event, such as what? Sell, transfer, barter, exchange, licensing, leasing, renting, disposal, made or agreed to be made for a consideration by a person in the course of furtherance of business. Since topic is time of supply, that is the reason I am trying to explain to all of you what is taxable event we are talking about in GST regime. Taxable event in GST is supply of goods or services. But the term supply is very subjective and inclusive definition. It is being defined under section 7. It continues further as a definition. Import of services for a consideration, whether or not in the course of furtherance of business. It further includes Schedule 1, even supply without consideration would be considered supply, and the 4 specific entry in Schedule 1. What are those 4 entry? Entry 1, permanent transfer or disposal of business asset where input tax credit is being taken, even without consideration, GST applicable. Entry 2, supply of goods or services between related person or distinct entities when made in the course of furtherance of business. So what is the answer coming out? Answer is, if I am having one branch in Delhi, another branch in Noida, both are separately registered, then we are distinct entities. So stock transfer of goods from Delhi to Noida, even without consideration, GST applicable. Valuation is a different issue altogether. Whether the valuation would be transaction value or cost price. If you go to the draft valuation rule for stock transfer between related person or distinct entities, it says open market value, like kind and quality, cost plus 10%, or residue method. But a proviso says of rule 2 that in case of related person and distinct entities, open market value would be at the option which is mentioned in the invoice. So you may mention any figure which may be cost price. To certain extent, this clarity is coming out. Now on stock transfer, we can consider cost price as a valuation for chargeability of GST, for which credit would be available to my recipient unit, and subsequently when recipient unit is selling or supplying, they will pay GST on value addition. But entry 2 reference is very important. Now employer and employee, both are related person. Employee giving services to the employer, not chargeable to GST. It is neither a supply of goods nor supply of services. Schedule 3. But employer giving services to the employee, then what happened? GST applicable. Technical terms, yes. But this entry 2 talks about gift up to 50,000 rupees will not be chargeable to GST, but there are lot many other transactions where employer is giving services to the employee, lunch, dinner, rent-free premises, car, even without consideration, GST applicable. This is what the meaning coming out. Entry 3 talks about transaction between principal and agent, and entry 4 talks about import of services by a taxable person from a related person or establishment, any establishment, his establishment outside India, when made in the course of furtherance of business. Schedule 1. Supply is not my topic, so I am not discussing each of the entry in detail part. but supply is a taxable event, then only we can determine time of supply. That is the reason I am taking some time to run through what is the supply. Supply definition further continues and says there will be schedule 2 which clearly specify what transaction would be supply of goods or supply of services. There are around 18 entries. 5 entries pertaining to supply of goods, 13 entries are pertaining to supply of services. You must be recalling declared service. Declared service, renting of immovable property, 66E of Finance Act 1994, renting, construction, IPR, IT software, right to use of movable goods, agreeing to do and not to do, works contract, and restaurant services. These are going to be termed as supply of service, and a clarity is being provided. Works contract now pertaining to immovable property, be it construction, erection, commissioning, installation, completion, fitting out, repair, maintenance, renovation, alteration pertaining to immovable property would be works contract. So what happened? Works contract going to be supply of service contract. Well said. But next question will come, repair of car which is pertaining to movable goods. Is it not works contract? So this concept is changing. We are moving from dominant intention test, Coney elevator judgment. You must be recalling 3-member bench initially said supply of lift along with the installation is a supply contract, overruled by 5-member bench stated to be works contract, and dominant intention test lose its relevance. Is again back in GST regime. So works contract only restricted to immovable property. Otherwise pertaining to movable property, we have to go back with the definition of composite supply and mixed supply. What is composite supply? Naturally bundled. What is mixed supply? Not naturally bundled. So repair of car, just imagine by yourself, I'm just pausing for myself. Repair of car has got material also, component use, and service component also. Please tell me, repair of car would be composite, naturally bundled, or mixed supply? 2 or more supplies are clubbed together. Supply of component, supply of service. But in repair of car, my intention, dominant intention is to get repairing done. So supply of component along with repairing, and repairing is the dominant intention, naturally bundle. It's a composite supply. Whole combo would be chargeable as naturally bundle, supply of service contract. So these are the things we have to keep it in our mind. And then schedule 3 says the specific 6th entry and stated to be it is neither a supply of goods nor supply of services. Employee to the employer, services by MP, MLA, services by court. Then they have stated number of other items, services by way of funeral, ceremonium. They have said actionable claim other than lotteries, betting and gambling. So these are the entry you would be finding in schedule 3, which is neither a supply of goods nor supply of services. So I've given a reasonable time. What is supply? Supply is going to be chargeable to GST. So now I would like to invite your attention. What is time of supply? Why this time of supply is specifically provided in GST provision? Section 12 talks about time of supply for goods. Section 13 talks about time of supply for services. Section 14 talks about change in GST rate for supply of goods or services. So let's do time of supply first, then we will come to the place of supply. Now when I've said supply the taxable event, then next question will come, GST applicable on supply of goods or supply of services. Just to create your interest, What is the relevance of time of supply? Let's take an example so that you can understand. See, we are company secretary, either we are employed or we are practicing. If I am a practicing company secretary, I am registered under service tax provision when my taxable turnover is more than 10 lakh rupees. Now, let me put this question to all of you. If I give you advance money today, 10 lakh rupees for undertaking a contract, question come whether service tax applicable on advance money received? Answer is yes, in service tax provision. Even though advance money received is not a taxable event, taxable event will continue to be rendering of service, right? Forward charge liability. If I take the same example pertaining to supply of goods, you give me 10 lakh rupees today, I am your supplier and you all are recipient. You all are recipient. I am your supplier. You give me 10 lakh rupees today, advance money for supply of goods after 3 months. Please tell me whether excise duty applicable, whether VAT applicable on advance money received? Answer would be no. There is no excise duty, no VAT on advance money received. Because taxable event for excise is manufacturing, taxable event for VAT or CST is sale of goods. But in service tax provision, even advance money received can be considered point of taxation, which is nothing but time of supply in GST provision. So even though taxable event would be supply, but for discharging the GST liability, we have to go back to the time of supply provision. Even though supply is not being made, but GST applicable, and that is what being governed by time of supply provision for goods or services. So let's try and understand. Time of supply for goods and services, broadly there are 4 parameters they have said. Forward charge liability. Forward charge means supplier. In all my example today, I will portray myself as a supplier and let you all be recipient, those who are watching today's webcast. Supplier. In case of forward charge, supplier of goods or services has to charge GST and deposit GST. When I talk about reverse charge, meaning is very simple. Supplier is not supposed to pay GST. Who have to pay? Recipient. Recipient of goods or services, they will pay GST liability. Then they talk about supply of voucher and other cases. So we will do one after another. Let's take up the forward charge first. Forward charge. Forward charge for goods. What is the time of supply provision for forward charge for goods? And I will request each one of you kindly take a piece of paper and pen. There is no PowerPoint presentation, but I will make it simpler for all of you. At least you can take down some of the component for your digest. So tomorrow if you are watching this webcast as a repeat webcast for you, at least these points which you are capturing today will help you to digest whatever I am communicating to you today. So are you ready with your paper and pen? Hope so. Let's start with forward charge for goods. I am supplying goods to you and you all are recipient. What is time of supply for Bimal Jain? Take example of, you are giving me 10 lakh rupees today. Today you are giving me 10 lakh rupees and I am standing on 21st of April. 10 lakh rupees is being paid to Bimal Jain for supply of goods after 3 months. Question comes whether GST applicable or not applicable. In this example, I am only getting 10 lakh rupees from you, but supply is going to happen only after 3 months. Question comes whether GST applicable or not applicable. What's time of supply, forward charge for goods provisions are? Earliest of the three. Item number 1, date of issue of invoice. 21st April, Bimal Jain has not raised any invoice. But first parameter, date of issue of invoice. Second parameter, last date when invoice need to be raised under section 31. Second parameter, repeating again, last date when invoice need to be raised under section 31. So what is the last date when Bimal Jain has to raise the invoice in terms of section 31? Section 31 says Bimal Jain as supplier has to raise invoice before or at the time, before or at the time when goods involves movement of the goods, then date of removal of goods. If goods involves movement of goods, then Bimal Jain has to raise the invoice before or at the time. Latest at the time. In that case, last date to raise the invoice would be date of removal, but I cannot postpone after, so before or at the time. Second provision says wherever goods does not involve movement or any other case, date of delivery or date of making the goods available. This is what the provision for last date when invoice need to be raised for supply of goods in terms of section 31. Third parameter, to determine time of supply or point of taxation. Date of receipt of money by supplier. So I have said 3 parameter, repeating again and asking you, judge yourself whether you got it right or not. Bimal Jain has received 10 lakh rupees today, advance money for supply of goods after 3 months. 3 parameters says date of issue of invoice, last date when invoice need to be raised in terms of section 31, last date of receipt of money, whichever is earlier. Now please tell me and just give your vibration whether GST applicable on 21st April. Answer is yes, because I am receiving the money is the earliest out of 3. GST applicable even on advance money received for supply of goods to be happening only after 3 months. So first we have decided supply has not taken place. It will take place only after 3 months, but still it is time of supply. It's point of taxation, GST applicable. So first GST applicable. Next question must be coming to your mind, whether Bimal Jain going to raise tax invoice on 21st April when he has not supplied the goods. Answer is big no. I will not raise the tax invoice. So what I am going to do, I am going to raise a receipt voucher, and that will create my corresponding GST liability and would be captured in GSTR1, outward supply return, whereby I have to pay the GST liability. So when receipt voucher is being created, GST liability is being created, then immediately GSTR1 will create one reference number, So this reference number is going to work in favor of Bimal Jain when he is going to supply goods after 3 months. When I am going to supply after 3 months, I will raise the tax invoice. again the liability would be created, but alongside this tax invoice I will also mention the reference number. The reference number of GST payment made on receipt voucher. So what happened? Output liability created after 3 months on actual supply of goods on raising of tax invoice get neutralized with the GST paid today on 21st April on raising of receipt voucher. Hence we need not require to pay GST again when I'm supplying goods and raising my tax invoice. That is how this transaction going to be captured. So I have told you that what is time of supply for forward charge goods supply. Having said this component, now we have to move and come back. What is forward charge time of supply for services? So just start thinking for yourself. You are a company secretary, practicing company secretary, or you are in a service sector, service provider. It's a forward charge liability. So Bimal Jain, company secretary, practicing company secretary, today registered under service tax provision. He normally charges service tax. Tomorrow he has to charge GST on supply of services. So let's take the same question. You are giving me 10 lakh rupees advance today for rendering one opinion. So don't start laughing 10 lakh for rendering opinion, right? Think big. Maybe we can think of 1 crore rupees is being paid for giving opinion. But let's go with an example. You are giving me, being client, 10 lakh rupees for supply of an opinion after 3 months. Please tell me, in existing regime today, not in GST regime, whether service tax applicable on advance money received. I'm just pausing for a few moments. Of course, service tax applicable on advance money received. Next question come, whether GST applicable on advance money received. My dear friends, GST applicable. Same provision, copy paste of service tax rule 3, point of taxation rule 2011 in GST provision. So easy to remember, isn't it? But the same copy paste service tax provision forward charge for supply of service, copy pasted for supply of goods forward charge, which is not the existing case. Now when I'm doing this part, I will also explain corresponding input tax credit provision. First, understand what is time of supply forward charge Bimal Jain on supply of service happening only after 3 months. You have only paid 10 lakh rupees today on 21st April. Earliest of the three. Rule 3, point of taxation rule 2011. Are you recalling? What was those? Date of receipt of money, date of invoice, provided invoice raised within 30 days from the completion of service, 45 days in case of banking and financial companies. If you have not raised the invoice within stipulated 30 days or 45 days, then point of taxation was date of completion of service. So out of 3, whichever is earlier, Now you are paying 10 lakh rupees to me, date of receipt of money is the earliest event, GST applicable, perfectly applicable. Now if applicable, I will raise the receipt voucher. Reference number is being generated in GSTR1. This reference number would be mentioned at the time of invoice raised, right? But in this process, when I'm saying date of receipt of money, date of invoice, provided invoice raised within 30 days or 45 days, this provision is coming under section 31, which talks about last date when invoice need to be raised. So what is the last date in terms of section 31 for raising invoice? Provision says you have to raise invoice within this 30 or 45 days before or after completion of provision of service. That is the reference of section 31. And last one is, if you don't raise invoice within 30 or 45 days as stated, then date of completion of service would be the POT, time of supply. So what we concluded, GST applicable on advance money. You have to raise receipt voucher. A reference number is generated on GST paid on receipt voucher. This reference number would be mentioned at the time of tax invoice generated on supply of service. Then the output liability on tax invoice get neutralized with the GST paid on advance money with the same reference number through GSTR1 outward supply return. Having said all this thing, forward charge. Now what this provision says, forward charge, time of supply for services. It also says if for any region you can't determine date of completion of service or date of invoice and there is no receipt of payment as well, then provision says date of entry in the books of recipient of service can be a trigger point, time of supply, point of taxation in the hands of supplier Bimal Jain. Look at the irony of this provision. It's a supplier whose liability, forward charge liability. If these three milestones is not identifiable, then this provision says even date of receipt shown in your books of accounts being recipient trigger liability of GST in the hands of Bimal Jain. How Bimal Jain will come to know when you are booking this transaction in your books of accounts? This is the irony. First part. Second part, on advance money GST applicable either supply of goods or supply of services. Receipt voucher created, liability created, payment is being made. I am posting this query to all of you. Being a recipient, can you take GST credit? Can you take GST credit though GST is being paid on advance money received? You can't take. That is what the answer. You can't take the credit. You would be taking credit only when you actually received goods and services, which you would be receiving only after 3 months, along with tax invoice. And tax invoice, receipt of goods or services would be the criteria for you to avail credit. So what happened? Being supplier, I paid the GST liability. Being recipient, you can't take credit. You will take credit only at the time of receipt of goods or services. Where the government is not unduly benefited, unjust enriched, they got the GST in their pocket, but credit is being restricted till the time of receipt of goods and services. So this could have been looked into, but nevertheless is a final law. We have to prepare ourselves. And one more provision of forward charge. What is this provision says? If I'm being supplier, receiving money in excess of the amount mentioned in my invoice, but up to 1,000 rupees, up to 1,000 rupees. In that case, time of supply would be at the option of supplier, be the date of issue of invoice. For understanding sake, I am a telecommunication company. I have raised mobile invoice for you 2,450. but you are paying me rounding of payment 3000 rupees. So you are paying in excess 550 rupees. Question will come, for this 550 rupees, what is time of supply? Point of taxation. For 2450 I have raised the invoice. GST liability accrue accordingly, but for this 550, what is the time of supply for discharging GST liability? Proviso says if any money received in excess of amount mentioned in the invoice but up to 1000 rupees, in that case time of supply for supplier at the option of Bimal Jain being supplier be the date of issuance of invoice. So when I am raising next invoice, I will net off the payment 550 and that date would be the time of supply for this excess money received. This is what the provision. And third, what is the date of receipt of payment, right? In both forward charge for goods, forward charge for services, I say date of receipt of payment. Are we really saying that date of receipt of payment only when it is coming to my bank account? Maybe you have given me a check and this check I have kept in my drawer after putting entry in my books that I received the payment from you, but I have not in cash, I have not deposited in my bank account. Then date of receipt of payment means date of entry in my books of accounts or date of credit in my bank statement, whichever is earlier. So even if I have made the entry in my books as the payment is being received, but I have not deposited the check for a month, that date of entry would be constituted as date of receipt of payment. It needs to be taken care of and understood in right perspective. So I am through with forward charge, time of supply for goods and services. Next is the reverse charge. So being supplier, I am relieved. My GST part is over. Now you all are recipient. Liability start for you. You all are sitting and watching webcast. Now it's a recipient liability. So next question will come to your mind, that in case of reverse charge, whether we are going to have similar kind of services which is specified in notification number 30/2012 for service tax reverse charge liability first. Second question will come, whether supply of goods can also fall under reverse charge where recipient has to pay. I would like to draw your attention. Section 9, subsection 3, chargeable section. Hope you are taking down my all the relevant provision. I am telling you these are the important for your preparation. Section 9, subsection 3. Reverse charge. What does section 9 subsection 3 says? Central government, state government may notify specified goods or services on recommendation of GST Council wherein GST liability to be paid by recipient only, not by the supplier. So in this case, GST to be paid by recipient. One provision. Second provision is a big open Pandora box now. Big open Pandora box. Section 9, subsection 4. I do not know how many of you have noticed this provision, but now there's a big irony. Big irony. Just listen the provision, then I will tell you. Section 9, subsection 4. What this provision says? If being a recipient, you are registered taxable person, you are taking supply of goods or services from unregistered person. Pay attention. You are recipient, you are registered, but you are purchasing goods or services from unregistered person, then in all such cases going to fall under reverse charge liability. Being recipient, you have to pay GST liability. Look at this provision now. You are paying 500 rupees to a sweeper for cleaning of your office. Sweeper is sure he is not registered. You have to pay reverse charge liability, being a recipient. This is one example I am giving you. There may be many examples. Maybe you are paying only 20 rupees to auto wala, and you are taking services from auto wala, and auto wala is not registered. Reverse charge liability. Think of a situation now, it's reverse charge liability. You have to now go back, what is time of supply for me to pay GST liability under reverse charge. So first irony, what happened, this 20 lakh criteria, aggregate turnover, which is 10 lakh for northeastern state including hilly state, has got all ruled out. This provision section 9 subsection 4 take everyone into GST net directly or indirectly. But since reverse charge liability, time of supply is important, we have to understand this time of supply provision. Let's focus on time of supply for reverse charge. Now I will do this reverse charge for services first, then I will move to the goods component. So let me ask from all of you, though I can't see you, I can't check what is your answer. Try to answer yourself, maybe with the tuning and telepathy I can understand you are answering something. Question to you. Let's say it's a reverse charge liability under service tax provision. I'm a lawyer. I'm giving services to you. Reverse charge liability. Or I'm a GTA, goods transport agency, giving services to you. Reverse charge liability. First you tell me what is the reverse charge point of taxation today in service tax regime. Whether any answer coming to your mind, is it clicking to you? Quick clicking. If not, listen. Rule 7, point of taxation rule 2011 says reverse charge POT is date of payment. Date of payment. Provided payment is made within 3 months from date of invoice. So let's say 21st April, I'm a GTA, I'm raising my invoice today on 21st April. Reverse charge liability for service tax would be date of payment. Let's say you are making payment on 21st April, invoice on 21st June, then what happened? POT arisen on date of payment 21st June, then reverse charge service tax need to be paid by 6th of July. This is what the provision. If you don't make payment within 3 months, then it says date following the end of 3 months would be the POT for reverse charge service tax. What is the provision now in GST for reverse charge? Time of supply, which is point of taxation for supply of services. I have categorically said government going to notify specified goods or services to be falling under reverse charge liability, and second, section 9 subsection 4, any purchase from unregistered person would be under reverse charge liability. So for reverse charge, time of supply for services, H, date of payment, date of payment, or date following the end of 60 days. 60 days from date of invoice would be the POT, earliest of the two. Date of payment or date following the end of 60 days from the date of issuance of invoice would be the POT. So 3 months reduced to 60 days. So this is what the same provision as we have read in Rule 7 of POT, as against 3 months, it is talking about now 60 days. So taken same example, hypothetically, if you want to understand in clear terms, let's say my specified services is under reverse charge and I given services to you on 21st April. Now you are making payment to me, let's say on 15th of June. In that case, reverse charge POT would be 15 June because you are making payment within 60 days. But if you are making payment on 15th August, then what happened? POT would be 21st April, 21st May, 21st June. So effectively 22nd June would be your point of taxation. Point of taxation, time of supply for reverse charge liability. And you have to pay then along with interest if you don't pay. So this is what reverse charge. Now when I've said this provision, you have to also understand another aspect to it. In case of associated enterprises, what provision says? Associated enterprises. In case of associated enterprises, earliest of the two, date of debit or date of making payment, whichever is earlier, date of debit, which is provision entry, or date of making payment, whichever is earlier. Same provision today in service tax, same provision in GST. So let's say LG Korea, LG Electronics Korea, giving services to LG India. And LG India is making provision entry on 31st March. Only provision entry, date of debit, that will trigger the reverse charge liability in the hands of LG India. That is what the provision says. So I've said reverse charge, non-associated enterprises, date of payment or date following the end of 60 days from the issuance of invoice. In case of associated enterprises, date of debit or date of making payment, whichever is earlier. Now this provision again further says, if you cannot identify date of payment or date of issue of invoice so as to calculate 60 days, then provision is saying whatever entry made in the books of recipient, can be a trigger point to determine time of supply or point of taxation for reverse charge liability. So even in case of non-associated enterprises, if it is not identifiable date of payment or date of issue of invoice, but any entry made by recipient in their books can be a trigger point. So provision made on 31st March on matching concept, revenue versus expenses. Even in case of non-associated enterprises, that can be trigger point for reverse charge liability for specified services. Now coming to reverse charge for supply of goods. First question goes to you. For supply of goods, have you seen reverse charge liability in the hands of recipient? I would be getting maximum answer as no, but there is concept of purchase tax. Now any purchase from unregistered person to registered person going to be reverse charge liability, RCM applicable for goods and services. Now let's focus what is reverse charge in case for goods, time of supply, point of taxation. It is earliest of the three. Date of receipt of goods, recipient, your liability, date of receipt of goods, date of payment by you to me, and third, date following the end of 30 days, 30, from the date of issue of invoice, whichever is earlier. So it is your liability It is your parameter you have to look at. Date of receipt of goods, date of payment by you to me, and last date following the end of 30 days from the date of issue of invoice would be the trigger point, earliest of the three, for you being a recipient to pay your GST liability. Now when I'm discussing this component, one factor you have to keep it in your mind. It further says, in case being a recipient, in case of supply of goods, you are not able to determine date of receipt of goods or date of payment or 30 days as stated, then even the date of entry in your books of accounts can be a trigger point for reverse charge for specified goods. Having said all this thing, let's do two more components here. The first component, I'm a supplier of goods or supplier of services. I'm raising my invoice also, but it's a reverse charge liability. First question will come, Bimal Jain supplying goods or supplying services, being supplier, but it's a reverse charge liability. Whether I will raise tax invoice or invoice, I will raise invoice. Now, if a reverse charge liability, then GSTR1, your outward supply return, will have relevant column for such invoices falling under reverse charge. So that invoice will generate your liability, create your liability in the hands of recipient to pay when your outward supply return is being finalized by 10th of next month. What happened when you're purchasing from unregistered person? He might not be raising invoice, leave tax invoice. How the liability would be created in your books of accounts and how it would be reflected in your GSTR1. In that case, being a recipient, you have to raise invoice, and that invoice particulars to be mentioned in specified column of GSTR1. When you mention those particulars transaction wise, not consolidated, you have paid to a sweeper, you have purchased stationery, you have paid to auto wala, it is not consolidated. Transaction wise you have to raise the invoice and capture in your outward supply return. Corresponding liability, GST liability, reverse charge would be created in your hand, and then you have to pay under reverse charge liability. So this unregistered to registered is not only reverse charge liability but compliances, raising invoice, transaction wise, creating liability, and then pay. Next question will come, if at all credit available, how the credit would be available? If at all credit available, how credit would be available? You must be knowing GSTR1 gets auto-populated invoice-wise. Then we have to check whether those invoices are pertaining to requisite input and input services. If requisite, it is falling within the definition of eligible input and input services, then you can accept those invoices as credit available, Otherwise, you may reject that these credit is not available to me. So GSTR1 auto-populated at GSTR2, but how reverse charge going to work? I have tried to make it simpler for all of you. So I have done forward charge, I have done with reverse charge. Now, third component is supply of voucher. What is supply of voucher provision says? If supply is identifiable in the voucher, then date of issue of invoice would be the time of supply. If voucher says that color television would be supplied up to 10,000 rupees or for a work 10,000 rupees, then supply is identifiable. Then in that case, time of supply would be date of issue of voucher. If supply is not identifiable, it is only worth 10,000 rupees, which you can get it redeem or in cash as per your sweet will, maybe towards supply of goods or supply of services. In that case, time of supply would be date of redemption of that voucher. So voucher part is over. Last component, wherever time of supply cannot be determined as discussed above, then residue case. Residue case is what? Wherever GST return need to be filed, then the time of supply would be the date of filing of GST return. In any other case, date of payment of GST, be it CGST, SGST, IGST, UTGST or compensation cess. This is what time of supply for goods. For services, I have done that. Come to section 14. What is section 14? You know, very simple. When there is change in rate, what is this relevance? You must be drawing and you must be recalling rule 4 of point of taxation rule 2011. Rule 4 of point of taxation rule 2011. Just to tell you and highlight. Are you recalling? 2 out of 3. Let's say service tax rate changed from 14% to 15%. We have seen in the past and we were struggling. Services is rendered when old rate was applicable, but invoice raised or payment received only after the change in rate. We used to do 2 out of 3. So the 3 important milestone: date of supply of goods or services, date of invoice and date of receipt of payment. If 2 activity out of 3 happening prior to change in rate, then old rate applicable. If 2 out of 3 happening after change in rate, then new rate applicable. Simple. You must be recalling that one. I'm sure about it. Let's take an example. Let's say on 1st July, they change in rate from 15% to 18%. Question would be coming to your mind. You might have rendered the service when rate is 15%, but invoice is raised, payment is received only after 1st July. Then what is the rate applicable? 18%. 2 out of 3. Same concept will work for supply of goods and supply of services. In section 14 of CGST Act, applicable for IGST and applicable for SGST and UTGST. One more component which is there today and which is not provided in GST law. When any new goods or services, let's say my particular goods and services is not taxable today. Let's say prior to 1st July it is not taxable. But after 1st July it is first time made taxable. Then rule 5 of point of taxation rule you must be recalling, right? And it comes to our mind, if I have supplied the goods or services prior to 1st July when it is not taxable, but only payment received after or invoice raised after, whether GST applicable. Rule 5, what rule 5 says, you must be recalling, right? And what it says, if payment is received and invoice is raised prior to the date services tax first time, or payment is received and invoice is raised within 14 days from the date services tax first time, service tax not applicable. But such kind of provision is not given in GST law. But it may happen that a cut-off date, a particular goods or services may not be taxable today, but tomorrow it is made taxable. So what happened? If supplied prior to the date when it is not taxable and subsequently payment received thereafter, why can't we have simple provision? If supply of such goods which is not taxable prior to made taxable, then we can always say if it is not taxable as on date and supplied today, it should not be made taxable irrespective of fact, payment received thereafter or invoice raised thereafter. If it is supplied after the date when it made taxable, simple GST applicable irrespective of fact whether payment received in the past. But nothing clarity, no provision in GST law. So I'm through with time of supply provision for goods and services. As time is running, I'm left out with half an hour more. I will touch base place of supply provision for goods and services. Why first of all place of supply is important, right? This question is very prominent and we would require to understand why place of supply is important. Now place of supply is important for parameter 1. India is moving from origin based to destination based tax. What is origin based and destination based? If I am supplying from today Delhi to Gurgaon, I would be charging IGST, and for sure we know that Delhi will not get anything being origin state. Then which state going to get SGST component of IGST? Of course Haryana. If it is consumed ultimately in the state of Haryana, if Haryana is again selling the same goods to Bihar, they are not consuming, then again IGST applicable. So what happened? SGST component of IGST, if at all accrue, it will accrue to the state of Bihar if it is ultimately consumed in the state of Bihar. So place of supply going to play important role. But second parameter is very, very important. What is second parameter? We all know as of now, for intrastate supply of goods or services, what is applicable? Tell me if it is coming to your mind. CGST and SGST. Hope I'm with all of you. For intrastate, within state supply of goods or services, what is applicable? CGST and SGST. And what happened for interstate supply of goods or supply of services? If I am supplying from Delhi to Gurgaon, interstate, whether supply of goods or supply of services, what is applicable? IGST, integrated goods and services tax. Is a central levy, sum total of CGST plus SGST. Hope we all are on same page. Now you would be thinking, sir, what is this UTGST has come? Maybe you would be thinking on those lines. Then just to highlight and tell you, UTGST going to play similar like SGST. It is applicable in those union territories which are not having state legislature. State legislature. So if intrastate transaction happening in such union territories with no state legislature, then in that case they would be charging CGST and UTGST. And any transaction from such union territories to other state or to other union territories, IGST going to be applicable. Hope I am clear to all of you. Now we have to have some thumb rule. I am sure you are still running with a piece of paper and your pen, and you will be taking down whatever input I am giving it to you. I said intrastate CGST and SGST applicable, but what is the thumb rule? Intrastate is applicable only when location of supplier and place of supply is in same state. I am repeating again. Location of supplier and place of supply is in same state, then this transaction would be called intrastate supply of goods or services. What is applicable? CGST and SGST. Next question comes, what is interstate supply of goods or services? Am I right? So what is the provision says? Next thumb rule, for interstate, location of supplier and place of supply would be in different state. I am repeating again, location of supplier and place of supply should be in different state, then this transaction is going to be called interstate supply of goods or services. What is applicable? IGST applicable. Having said that, section 7 of IGST Act 2017 define what all transactions are interstate. So first I have already communicated, location of supplier and place of supply is in different state, it is interstate. Import and export of goods or services would be considered as interstate supply of goods or services, read with Article 269A Constitution of India. So this is import and export. Third, any supply of goods or services to or by SEZ unit or developer would be interstate supply of goods or services. Would be interstate supply of goods or services. And any other transaction which is not falling anywhere will always be considered interstate supply of goods or services. So I have given you what is the parameter to determine intrastate and interstate. Now let me catch up with one good example and why it is important for all of us to determine a transaction is a intrastate or interstate. Let's say today I determine my transaction as a intrastate, then I must have charged CGST and SGST, right? But let's say after 2 years department comes for audit and they say, Mr. Jain, you have made the mistake. It is not intrastate transaction, it is interstate transaction and you should have charged IGST. But Bimal Jain has wrongly charged CGST and SGST, which he has collected and deposited also to the respective government. CGST has gone to center, SGST has gone to state. Now question will come, department would be asking to pay IGST, but I have charged CGST and SGST which I have deposited also. Question will come, can I adjust payment of CGST and SGST towards IGST liability? I am posting to all of you, please start sounding something within your mind. I can't see, but after this webcast I need to have your feedback, I need to have your vibration. I am raising 3-4 queries in my webcast. Those who know me well, they are connected with me. Of course they should come back and tell me, sir, when you posted a query we could respond to the query. Though I am not in front of you, but if you are writing back to me, at least I will judge, at least you are learning and you are understanding the issue. Back to the same query, can you adjust? Answer is big no, it can't be adjusted, meaning thereby IGST need to be paid. What happened for CGST and SGST which you have deposited? We have to go for refund. and we all know how difficult it is to get the refund from the department. So it would be utmost important for us to determine whether a transaction is a intrastate or interstate. If we do mistake in determining the transaction, then what happens? We have to pay the right taxes, go for refund of the taxes paid earlier, and you know the refund, how refund comes back. So with this mindset, we have to look at the provision of place of supply for goods or services. When I'm saying place of supply, I have picked up the two important parameters: location of supplier and place of supply. What could be location of supplier for services? Because most of the friends are from CS fraternity, service sector watching today. So what is the location of supplier? They say place of business for which registration is being taken. That is the location of supplier. Otherwise, fixed establishment. What is fixed establishment? Fixed establishment is characterized by sufficient degree of permanence of human and technical resources. Otherwise, establishment most directly concerned or usual place of residence. This is what the provision pertaining to location of supplier for services. Next is place of supply. So let me do service sector first, then I will go to the goods, because service sector we are connected. Now let's take an example and proceed further. See, let's say I'm having office in Delhi. I'm a CS professional. My client is located in Gurgaon. My recipient is located in Gurgaon. My client is coming for taking opinion in my office in Delhi. Now I'm giving services to my client in my office in Delhi. Please tell me whether this transaction between Bimal Jain as supplier, recipient client is registered in Gurgaon, but he's coming to my office in Delhi, is an intrastate transaction or interstate transaction, right? Then you have to identify only two components. What are those two components, my dear friends? Location of supplier, no problem. Bimal Jain, registered in Delhi, identifiable, Delhi. Second is, what is place of supply, right? Now place of supply important. Client is registered in Gurgaon, but he has come all the way to my Delhi office. Maybe it is coming to your mind that place of supply is Delhi, but here you have to pay attention. Place of supply has been defined, specifically being defined in IGST Act 2017. So you will not analyze the way it is coming to your mind. You have to go back to the place of supply provision and look at those provision. That as per that provision, where is place of supply? So when I'm talking about place of supply for services, it is services. Then place of supply, that is specific provision provided for specified services like immovable property, event, transportation of goods, transportation of passengers, telecommunication, banking and financial, insurance, advertisement. These are the specific place of supply provision is being provided. But there's the one default rule. Whenever you're not falling under specified services, you have to go back to default rule. So all professionals like CS, they are falling into default rule, and place of supply would be, I'm saying place of supply would be, in case of B2B transaction. What is B2B? One 10 to another 10. I am registered, you are registered. One registered to another registered. In that case, place of supply in case of B2B transaction would be location of recipient. Are you hearing me? Location of recipient. In case of B2C transaction, 110 to non-10, registered to unregistered. In that case, if address of recipient is available with the supplier, then location of recipient. If address is not available, then location of supplier would be the place of supply. So I have said the provision. Back to the case study. So Gurgaon based client coming to your office in Delhi for taking opinion. Please tell me your transaction would be intrastate or interstate. I will look forward for your answer. At the moment I can't watch you, but intra or inter, in this case, this transaction going to be interstate supply. Why? Location of supplier, Bimal, Jain, Delhi. Place of supply would be location of recipient. B2B transaction, Gurgaon. Place of supply is Gurgaon. In that case, this transaction would be chargeable to IGST. Hope I am clear to all of you. Clear to all of you. Please keep it in your mind. Let me do two more case studies so that you can understand the concept of place of supply. Now, in this given situation, location of immovable property. Location of immovable property. Now let's take an example, and so that you can understand. Let's say I am owner of 4 property situated in 4 different states other than Delhi. I am having 4 immovable property located in 4 different states other than Delhi. Today I may have taken centralized registration. In Delhi, I am filing my service tax return in Delhi, 2 half-yearly return, and making payment of service tax for my outward liability of 4 immovable property of 4 different states sitting in Delhi, because service tax is a central levy. What happened post GST? Please tell me. What happened post GST? First big question will come to your mind, right? Now these properties are located in 4 different states. I have rented these premises to a client located in that respective state. Now the first question which is going to come in everyone's mind now, please tell me what is the place of supply. Place of supply will always be location of immovable property. Will always be location of immovable property. But now in this situation which I am telling you, in this situation I am registered in Delhi. My property located in other state other than Delhi. Then in that case, transaction would be, what would be? Please tell me. Interstate. Location of supplier Delhi. Place of supply, let's say Noida. IGST applicable. But one parameter I want to highlight and want to do case study with all of you. Let's say my client is also located in Delhi. I am also located in Delhi, but property is in Noida. Property is in Noida. So supplier, recipient both are in Delhi, but property located in Noida. Please tell me, this transaction would be intrastate or interstate? I have told you the thumb rule. Location of supplier Bimal Jain, Delhi, and place of supply is the location of immovable property, which is Noida. IGST applicable even though you are raising invoice to a recipient located in the same state. IGST applicable. Now, one more parameter which normally comes and which I am getting as a query across India, and this query is, what is the reference of this place of supply? We all know GST is a destination based consumption tax. Destination based consumption tax. It will accrue to a state where ultimately goods and services are going to be consumed. But am I required to take registration as per the place of supply provision? For registration provisions are, I have to take registration in the state where from I am supplying goods or supplying services. So registration continue to be origin state, but GST going to accrue to destination state. I have to take a registration where from I am supplying goods or supplying services. So in this given example, it may be considered that my property is located in Noida. So it is supplied only from Noida. But to highlight, GST has got number of ways to look at. And let me do this case study. Just give me a minute. Hope I am audible to all. Okay. So in this case, I want to do this case study with all of you so that I can tell you that GST has got number of ways to look at. On this case study, there are two answers possible. The first answer, I may not require 4 registration in 4 different states on the basis of location of immovable property, because my principal place of business continue to be Delhi. So I can carry on with the principal place of business as a location of supplier definition. If I continue with this example, so what are the advantage and disadvantage? Advantage could be, I need not require to go in 4 different states, need not require to have 4 registration, and need not require to file minimum 37 return per registration. You know 3 returns are must. Outward supply by 10th of next month, inward supply by 15th of next month, consolidated by 20th of next month per month. 3 into 12, 36 plus 1 annual return, 37 return per registration must. So these are the advantage as against only 2 half yearly return which is being filed today, 37 return per registration. Now when I am saying this, then we have to really analyze. So these are the advantage. What could be drawback? What would be pitfall? Drawback would be, if I don't take registration in the respective state other than Delhi, then what happened? I would be procuring local input and input services pertaining to those property located in that respective state. So what happened? In that scenario, the local supplier who is supplying input and input services pertaining to that property would be charging CGST and respective state SGST. Now they are charging, let's say my property in Noida, in my example, then they must be charging CGST and UP SGST. But I have not taken registration state-wise. Question will come, can I take credit of that CGST and UP SGST in my daily registration? I can't take credit of CGST and UP SGST credit in my daily registration. We all are saying that the GST is going to be a one nation, one tax. But if you look at from this perspective, our GST credit is restricted state-wise. So this is not giving an answer that we are going to have one nation, one tax scenario. But place of supply should not be blindly applied as taking criteria for registration. For taking registration, you have to go to the state where from you are supplying goods or supplying services, and that could be, I have done just one case study. There may be ample case study can be done for different categories of supply of goods and supply of services. Time pause is there, I cannot go extend it, and that is the reason I am not touching those provisions. And I am also getting queries which is required to be and need to be responded. So service part I am just holding back here. Let me do place of supply for goods. Place of supply for goods. What are the provision is being stated? Wherever goods involves movement of goods, place of supply would be where delivery terminates. Delivery terminates. If you want to understand this example, let's listen to it. Let's say I am a supplier of goods in Delhi and you are a recipient. You are also in Delhi. We both are registered in Delhi. But you wanted me to deliver these goods to Mumbai. So my goods involves movement of goods, and this movement is terminating in the state of Maharashtra. So what is the thumb rule? I said location of supplier Delhi and place of supply would be where the movement or delivery is happening, where transportation terminates, Maharashtra. IGST applicable even though I am raising invoice within state. So these parameters we have to keep it in our mind. Wherever goods does not involve movement of goods, in that case place of delivery, place of supply would be place of delivery. In case where transfer of title by way of document, bill to SIP to model, E1, E2 model. Let me do this case study, that would be interesting for lot of participants today. Then we'll catch up with the question and answers. What is this E1, E2 cell? Let's create an example so that we can understand. Let's say I'm a supplier in Delhi. You are B, you are also in Delhi. But you wanted me to deliver the goods to C in Haryana, in Gurgaon. So when I'm supplying goods, I'm raising invoice to you. You are in Delhi by transfer of title in goods. But you wanted me to deliver this goods to Haryana, Gurgaon. So there are three parties involved. Three parties. A in Delhi, B in Delhi, C in Haryana. So there are two supply involved, A to B and B to C. So first we have to determine whether A to B supply is intrastate or interstate and B to C supply is interstate or intrastate. So this place of supply provision says wherever goods are being transferred by transfer of title by way of document, they say place of supply for the intermediary B would be his principal place of business. I will not check place of supply where transportation terminates or delivery terminates. For me, A to B, place of supply would be principal place of business of B. So in this case, location of supplier A, Delhi, place of supply Delhi, intrastate, I would be charging CGST and Delhi SGST. Now subsequent B to C, in this case B is the supplier, location of supplier Delhi, but for place of supply wherever transportation terminates, delivery terminates, which is Gurgaon, interstate transaction, and IGST applicable. What is applicable? IGST, and this is IGST transaction of supplier B, and place of supply where the transportation terminates, IGST applicable. I know place of supply is the big topic, cannot be really concluded in short span of time, but request all of you to pay attention. Section 7 to determine interstate, Section 8 to determine intrastate, Section 10 for place of supply for goods domestic transaction, 11 place of supply for import export of goods, Section 12 place of supply for domestic service transaction, Section 13 place of supply for import and export of services. Time is paused. I can only request, I can respond back to the queries whatever I got now, but in case you are having any further query, you must be having email ID of our institute. You can write back to us. We'll try to respond back to those queries as well. Now taking time to respond whatever query I got.
I think sir gave us a detailed session in the question answer form only, and most of your queries were answered. And since we do not have much time, or we did not get time to discuss the place of supply, we'll touch upon 2-3 questions related to the same, and maybe we can solve your queries. So sir, what would be a place of supply in relation to a mobile connection?
In case of telecommunication, there are the different parameters, whether the fixed landline or prepaid or postpaid. In case of fixed landline, place of supply where the fixed landline is situated. In case of postpaid, location of recipient. In case of prepaid, where the ultimate payment is being made. So this is a detailed provision for place of supply for telecommunication services.
Okay. And similarly sir, if we're organizing an event in multiple states like the IPL series or some series, then what would be the place of supply?
Ultimately place of supply would be the event where the event is being organized. So maybe contract, the consolidated contract, but place of supply need to be adjusted where the event is happening. So maybe IPL matches are played in 5 different states. So 5 different states would be the place of supply in that case.
Okay. And suppose a customer has not generated invoice, the supplier has not generated invoice to the customer, and the provision of service is also not ascertainable, but they've received some payment for the supply. They have to make the payment then?
Of course, advance money received, GST applicable.
Yes. And one last question would be that a person travels by air from a flight from Mumbai to Delhi and gets his travel insurance done in Mumbai. What would be the place of supply?
Insurance services is being when B2B transaction, location of recipient. In case of B2C transaction, whatever address of recipient is there in the books of supplier.
So suppose a person goes from one city to another, and in that city he suppose avails a service of a bank.
Wherever you are going, basically if you are an insurance company and giving services, in case of B2B transaction, place of supply would be location of recipient, irrespective of fact whether you are traveling to Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai. I will treat place of supply would be location of recipient in case of B2B transaction.
So suppose in a banking transaction, if he avails the services of a bank in some other city, then?
Simple. In case of banking also, they are saying that B2B transaction, location of recipient.
Okay.
So now you cannot really go and track like this, but for giving answer to all of you, that there are 8 or 9 different committees are being formed, like telecommunication, insurance, banking and financial. They are representing to the government of India that they should be given centralized registration. It would be very difficult task for them to take registration on the basis of place of supply. They might not be having office, but location of recipient in case of B2B is a place of supply may create a problem. So these are the point of concern, and for that committee is being formed by Government of India. I will request, if you are representing from these particular sector, you should represent your issue now before it is getting finalized.
We thank sir for a detailed session on place and time of supply. Hope you viewers benefited from the session, and should you view the session at a later date, it will be available at the website in the event section of the GST corner. Friends, stay tuned for the next session on input tax, credit and job work next Friday at the same time and the same link.
Let me take this opportunity to thanks each one of you for watching today's webcast. If you want any further query, you can write back to ICSI email ID. We'll try to definitely respond it back, and I wish each one of you a great career in GST. Start GST happening for all of us together, and as a CS profession we have to make sure that we are not losing this opportunity. Wish each one of you start GST. My best wishes to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.